Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Philosopher, the Stoic, and the Teddy Bear. This is episode 35, airing on Thursday, 26th. I am Peyman Askari. I'm joined by none other than Randy Hillier and his wonderful daughter, Chelsea. Ladies first, Chelsea, how's it going?
Very well. It's my first time back online in a very long time, and there aren't many people who could get me to come out of the woodwork at this point, but you managed to do it, Peyman, so I thank you for that. Thank you for the invitation, seriously, and to you too, JP.
Well, it's good to have you on. Randy, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine and dandy, and still in hibernation underneath the blankets of snow in Lanark County, but not hibernated too much. And it looks like the nice weather is starting to roll around. So spring is not far around the corner. So life is good.
It's always good to have an optimistic view. I'm glad to hear that. Eldon, hello from Eastern Ontario. He's from the Charleston Lake area. Henning, I'm sorry you can't hear anything, but we are actually talking. So maybe try some headphones. Today we're going to have a pretty content-heavy episode, and Mr. Hillier set up the agenda. I'm just going to quickly go over this. We will be going over the tragedy at Tumbler Ridge. We're going to be going over human rights lawfare in BC, specifically the tribunals. We'll touch on Iran, the Red Ensign, and how getting rid of it led to multiculturalism. Most of this comes from an article Mr. Hillier wrote. The trading in of our debt-free homes for debt-based renting in tent cities, and finally trading God's moral authority for the supremacy of the state and the algorithm. Why don't we start with a small one, an easy one? We'll go to you, Mr. Hillier. The tragedy at Tumbler Ridge.
Well, that is, yeah. It's, I've written extensively on this, Peyman, and thanks for having some wide-ranging subjects to talk about tonight, because really, you have to look at the totality of what's happening in our country. And Tumbler Ridge shows this in real stark contrast to me between when I was growing up in our country and this 18-year-old boy, Jesse Strang, who went on a murder spree in Tumbler Ridge and killed 8 other people, including his half brother or quarter brother or some and his mother and 6 other individuals, and most of them 12 and 13-year-old kids. And when I look at this to see a boy who at the age of 12 years of age started being fed a steady diet of lies, and then a steady diet of prescription medications. We know for a fact he was on antipsychotic medications, antidepressant medications, on hormones, female hormones, puberty blockers, as well as, a cocktail of other medications all the time while he is being fed and being affirmed in this fantasy that boys can be girls. Like, if that isn't a recipe for a mucked up, screwed up, distorted child, like there's you can't feed lies and prescription medications to a young child and expect them to grow up normally. And in this case, with catastrophic consequences, not just for himself and his family, but for others in Tumbler Ridge. And this builds on a growing trend that I've seen of these young kids being turned into murderers. We had a case here in Perth just a year ago where a young boy, much along the same lines as Jesse Strang, but younger, 14, murdered another who pretended to be a girl or was told that he could be a girl, who was going through the same process as young Jesse in Tumbler Ridge, who took a baseball bat and murdered another 14-year-old boy here in small town Perth, Ontario. Like, let's wake up, boys and girls. Like, this is not what moms and dads are supposed to be doing with their children, feeding them lies that they can live in a fantasy world and feeding them a diet of prescription drugs. And of course, this all goes back to, well, not originally, but a focal point of it, in my view, is Bill C-4 that was passed 5 years ago with unanimous consent by the Conservatives, but with the Liberals, with the NDP, with the Greens, who all said in this Bill C-4 that you have to affirm this fantasy world in young boys and girls, and you can't tell them the truth. And that this applies to professionals, it applies to medical doctors, psychologists, pastors, parents, law enforcement, that don't tell your child the truth, feed them a steady diet of lies, and things will be good. And it's not so good in Tumbler Ridge. It's not so good here in Perth. It's not good anywhere. So let's, for the people of Canada, and especially for parents, you need to realize that truth, honesty, love are what children need, not lies, prescription medications, and surgical amputations and manipulations. That's not going to.
Yeah,
This is something that I've talked to my dad about. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, this is something that I've talked to my dad about a lot. I have 3 stepsons who are 17, 21, and 22. And I've got 2 of my own sons who are 10 and 11. And it's something, not so much with my own kids because they have me as a mother, but I see with my stepsons, which is lies are seen as love. So if you are willing to lie to them, then that's interpreted as love. And if you tell them the truth, then you become a villain. You become someone who is peddling hate, or, that's trying to go out of their way to hurt them. And it's so stark when you actually see it happen in real life, that this is what these kids are being told. This is what they've been taught. Lies are love. Truth is the devil, basically. Sorry, had to step in.
No, well, it was your turn. I was going to say if you wanted to follow up. Is that it?
Yeah, I see it. I see it every day. I see it every day with my stepsons and kids sort of their age. And it's just like, it's such a terrible thing. Now, I think my stepsons are starting to break out of it, after having to deal with me for as many years as they have. And I've told them this exact same thing. I'm not telling you the truth to hurt you. I'm actually telling you the truth to save you. And you think you want me to lie, but I promise you, if I'm lying to you behind your back, everyone is telling the truth about you. So would you rather people tell the truth about you behind your back or to your face? And that's something that's really hard to come to terms with. They want to be told what they want to hear. They're kids, right? Even though they're older, my stepsons are older. It's something like that they have to come to terms with, which is that, yeah, people will tell you something to your face. They'll tell you the lie that you want to hear. And behind your back, they're saying exactly what they really think. So you may as well just face that first. But this is to the core of this issue of what happened in Tumbler Ridge. And parents find it much easier to lie to their kids because it makes their kids happy in the moment, but it ruins them in the long term.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I just want to put some clarity on the level of this lie. Like, I couldn't, if I spent all day trying to think of a bigger lie to tell, I don't think I potentially could. We're teaching these children that gender sex is gender, and gender is an abstract. It's not biologically linked. Now, this abstraction can be interpreted in any way you want subjectively. And this is affirmed by their school curriculums, by every aspect of society. So here's the worst part, and this is what's having the radicalizing effect. We're also teaching this to our children in the context that there's this oppressive, white supremacist, heteronormative patriarchy. And they're trying to hold you down and deny your existence. And that's having such a radicalizing effect. These young people, they're full of pseudo-rebellion and pseudo-moralism. They're trying to stand up against the man. And they're being spoon-fed their rebellion. And it's inaccurate. And it's leading them. We've seen a lot of mass shootings in America, which were of a similar vein, right? Like you're giving these kids, you're telling them lies, then you're giving them drugs, and then you're telling them that society is against them. And then you're seeing it manifest itself in the worst kind of way. And unfortunately, it's becoming a repetitive occurrence.
For the people, there's a couple of people from Facebook who are saying that there's no sound. We're terribly sorry, but that appears to be a technical issue on Facebook's end. So take it up with Mark Zuckerberg. You can go on X and YouTube if you want to watch. I find it exhausting because I've seen this moral decline in Canada since I came here like 35 years ago. And I just call it an abdication of parental responsibility. Like parents, they're not being parents and protecting their children. They're either being friends with them, as Chelsea you mentioned, they're telling them what they think that they want to hear, or they're busy off having affairs, going to hot yoga classes. Like this is civilizational decline. I'll throw it over to you, Randy.
Well, there has been a long and steady and tragic decline in morality. And I think for a great many Canadians, they don't even understand what the purpose or the objective or role of what morality is. It's just like that's passé. Like it's you can have all the benefits of a great society that our forefathers and ancestors built without having any of the obligations or responsibilities of having a universal moral standard within society. And it's just it's bizarre to me that people think you can have a high trust orderly, peaceful, free society without in the absence of morality. It's never happened before, and it will never happen. There has to be a universally accepted code, that's where. And one of the fundamentals to that moral code is truthfulness, is honesty. That is, as Chelsea said, a mother and a father, especially, they are seen as the fount of all truth and honesty to their sons and daughters. Like sons and daughters look up to their parents for that ultimate guidance for their lives. And when they're and they view that moms and dads have to be truthful to them, have to be honest, and that they wouldn't lie. But here it is: our parents are lying to their children, and the children are being confused at thinking that lies are love. It's quite the contrary. So this is a big, even though the law is completely inverted to its purpose, it still is up to moms and dads to resolve this. And, and I put it out like, not that I'm any, I grew up in a family with 8 other siblings. None of us were gay, lesbian, or trans, right? Why was that? And then I have 4 adult children. None of them are gay, lesbian, or trans. Okay. I have 10 grandchildren now. None of them are gay, lesbian, or trans. Like, what the hell is going on here? Because we know since we started tracking this around 2000, the increase in gay, lesbian, and trans has skyrocketed from 300,000 in people in 2000 to 1.3 million today, and 5% of the population. Like, okay, maybe, just maybe, this is a function. This dysfunction of our children is a function of the dishonesty of the parents.
Could be. Chelsea, you're next.
Well, I want to talk to a bunch of, if I can remember now what JP was saying, but my dad is right. But one of the big issues is that parents, moms and dads, they're not only lying to their kids, they're lying to each other, and they're lying to themselves. And I had a conversation with my younger son today, who is a very, very special child, like very special. And he is, he's brilliant and he's charming, and I mean, he's magnetic and all of those things. But the reason we had this conversation today was because every day this week that I picked him up from school, he's being nasty. Like, if I said something, that he didn't want to hear, he was nasty to me. And it wasn't because I was lying to him or because I was telling him the truth. It was because he's probably tired, from a long day at school. And I said to him, dude, instead of treating everyone else like shit, you need to look at yourself and say, I'm in a foul mood. I'm crusty. It has nothing to do with anyone else. I'm being an arsehole. Okay. And then you need to walk away so that you can just go be an arsehole. And I said to him, being honest with yourself is where everything starts. I literally had this conversation with him this evening on the way home from school. Like, be honest with yourself about where you're at. And take responsibility and accountability for the way that you are acting and the way that you're behaving and the way that you're treating other people. And so just to my dad's point, I really think that it's not just about lying to our kids, but lying to ourselves, and it's about lying to those around us, including our spouses. But to JP's point, several of his, if I can remember them, like I said, I like to tell people gender actually does not exist. We're told it's a construct. We are. I mean, in gender theory, we're told it's a construct. It's a construct that doesn't actually exist. Okay. I grew up as a tomboy. I still am a tomboy. Like, through and through. I'm a tomboy. I dress like a boy. I'm wearing a man's plaid shirt right now. Okay. My dad can vouch for this. I put makeup on tonight because I was going to be on camera. It's the first in a long time. I had to punch the holes back through my ears to put earrings in because that's not what I do. At no point in my life, even though people mistook me for a boy when I was young, at no point in my life did anyone tell me that I was a boy. And I knew that I wasn't. Okay. So this construct of gender is so confounding to me, because at one point they're saying, well, you can be anything you want to be, and you can look any way you want to look, and you can present any way you want to present. However, the whole trans thing is falling into this made up belief that women wear dresses and makeup and do their nails and get their eyelashes did. And, boys wear pants and plaid shirts and get their hair cut short. And none of that changes. And the way you present yourself to the world changes nothing about who you actually are. And it's actually incredibly regressive to tell children otherwise, because then you take a child like me, who grew up with 3 brothers and have been surrounded by boys and men my entire life, that just because I present in a certain way, I must be who they are. How degrading is that to me as a human being? And then to JP's other point about, you talked sort of about rebellion and like against the man. Yeah, I mean, I would love for someone anywhere in the world to raise their arm and say that they never rebelled as a teenager. And the way that we used to do it was in normal ways, which was like me, I thought I was a punk. Okay. So like I wore Doc Martens. I put red laces in them. I laced them a certain way because that was what was cool for punks. And like at one point, don't even ask my dad about this, I got my septum pierced 20 years ago. I had a lip ring right here. I had friggin' bangs down to here. I only wore flannel. I longboarded. I only wore Converse because I was like, I was rebelling. That we have people who were into metal. And most of our rebellion, I think, actually going back way back to even the 40s and 50s, was centered around music. So it was, what kind of genre of music do you like? And that genre of music sort of let you explore ways to rebel against your parents and against society and all that stuff. And, you had rock and roll back in the day, and then you had, hip hop, R&B, punk, like, whatever it is, metal. And like, that's a normal thing. I should think that every single teenager out there should go through that period where your parents look at you and they're like, oh, Lord Almighty, like, what is this dumbass doing over here? But they let you go because they know it's a phase. What parents are doing now and what our government is doing now and what society is doing now is solidifying that rebellion phase into something permanent and not allowing children to just experiment with things and move on. And I really it's something that I really feel. I love music, so it's something that I feel very deeply about seeing yourself when you don't know who you are in something in pop culture, right? And yeah, like I said, now it's like, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for kids to just like wear all black and put on some black eyeliner and like paint their nails black. That wasn't enough. Parents needed their kids to be extra special, and kids needed to rebel even more. And then instead of your parents looking at you and being like, oh, this dumbass over here, they're like, oh, sweetheart, you know what? Let's permanently dye your nails black. Let's tattoo black lipstick on you, sweetheart. Because that's who you are. Like, that's the equivalent of what they're doing now, except for that's even more egregious because now it's medical and not just cosmetic. So, I don't know. I'm a little bit passionate about the subject.
I agree with you entirely. It's a good point. These cliques that would come as a large part an outgrowth of music culture. These were like your first tribes when you're in high school and you'd start, I'm going to hang out with the skaters. I'm going to hang out with the jocks. You would identify yourself in that way. And that's why I use the term very carefully, spoon-fed the rebellion. So now these kids were all prone for that, especially some of us, some more so than others. And they have this thing already. Well, hey, there's this marginalized group and you can identify as this thing. And to your point, Randy, like you were saying, how it's increasing. There's a lot of literature regarding this. It's called a social contagion. So we've seen this with bulimia. Who heard of bulimia in the 70s? Nobody. But in the 80s, they started putting it on TV and people started to see it and they started to imagine and manifest the symptoms. So like this is a psychological phenomenon, but it's well documented. There's a social contagion element to this. And it's like I said, worse than even like the curriculum in the school system, that kind of affirms this stuff. But like the algorithms are what's really catching it fire. Like these kids, we give them these phones and they're just on these algorithms and it finds out what they're leaning into. And then it just feeds them more of this stuff. And it's having such a detrimental effect on them. It's hard to imagine we're here.
Can I jump in really quickly? Sorry, Peyman. I'm sorry. I'm not going to take over, I swear. But I had the great misfortune my first year of university of being put on an all-girls floor in residence. And it was like my own personal hell. And what happened was that there was a girl on our floor. I'll never forget her. And this is way back in 2003. Okay. So there was a girl on our floor who had a very, very serious case of celiac disease. Before gluten intolerance was even a thing, she was severely celiac, to the point where, like, it interrupted her education and her daily life and everything. and she was rail thin because she couldn't eat anything, because at that time you couldn't even get gluten-free food, right? She was basically non-existent. And what happened was that all the girls on the floor became anorexic and bulimic because everyone wanted to be as skinny as the girl who was suffering through every day with celiac disease. And tomboy, I'm looking around, and even I didn't really go there, but like, even for me, like, you could see, like, everyone's working out obsessively and they're starving themselves, and they're like, so they're not going to eat. So you have no one to go eat with, and they're all at the gym all day. So you decide that you're going to go to the gym, even though you hate working out. And like, you see how these things happen. I mean, I saw it firsthand. Social contagion is real. And these girls, I ended up leaving as soon as reading week came in February. I literally packed up my stuff and moved out of residence. I never talked to any of them again because it was such a sick place to be. And for people to think that that's not real, that doesn't happen, and that hasn't been exacerbated and amplified now through social media and algorithms and all of that stuff. I mean, and just pop culture in general, what we see on TV. I mean, you've got to be crazy. I literally watched a floor of 50 girls become anorexic because they want to be as skinny as the girl suffering with celiac disease.
First
So,
world problems.
well, and like, strong anecdote, you know, it is first world problems. And like, you think about this poor girl, all she wanted to do was to be able to eat. And all the other girls did was starve themselves so that they could look like her.
Yes.
Imagine. And now we're doing the same thing.
Unfortunately, it was a bit of a zoo over here with these dogs going nuts. I missed some of that, but I guess I just wanted to mention two things. JT was saying spot on, Chelsea. What you said before about the kids and the parents. Sue Kellen Dyer, thank you for reposting. If I could ask everyone else to repost as well. Randy, I was thinking maybe I don't know if we'll get through all of our topics, but maybe we should head on over to the tribunals, the lawfare in BC.
Yeah. I think that's a good, like, there's another aspect of how this dishonesty manifests itself now, and moving from the home and into these human rights tribunals. And we see this trustee in British Columbia who has been fined I think the largest penalty by any human rights tribunal in Canada, $750,000 for rejecting the lie, for saying truth is more important than affirming the lie, and that and he's a school board trustee. He has an obligation to be honest and truthful, and now he finds himself penalized. But I think underneath that, I just like to take a moment. Like, a lot of people don't understand what human rights tribunals are, and the fatal flaws that are included and incorporated in this system. These are not real courts, although they have the authority of the court. They have none of the safeguards of our legal system, such as due process. And historically, like here in Ontario, up until 2008, they were limited. I think the maximum fine or penalty that could be assigned in the Ontario Human Rights Tribunals was $20,000. We've since taken that cap off as well. But these were generally civil actions that weren't criminal, and they were actions oftentimes by individuals against their landlord or against their employer or against an institution for a perceived or real discrimination on age, sex, disabilities, prescribed discriminatory actions. But it doesn't have any due process of law to safeguard it. And one of the other great failings is our government funds the proponent. So unlike any other civil claim, if you, Peyman, make a claim against me, you do it on your own dime. The government doesn't fund you in your claim against me. But in the human rights tribunals, the proponent is funded by the government, and the individual has to carry the can and defend themselves on their own. And like this sets up for an exceptionally tilted playing field for the defendant. Not only is he fighting the government's full weight of the government's funding, but doesn't have the safeguards of due process. So, back in 2009, when I ran for the leadership of the party, of the Conservative Party here, that was one of my key planks, was to abolish the human rights tribunals in Ontario. And there is no fixing them, in my view. They need to be abolished. And this case in BC, I think, just is further evidence that they can't be fixed. We are going, they're sort of like the ultimate Soviet apparatchik to enforce the dogma of the state against the individual. That's and this large award of $750,000 is because somebody says there are only two biological sexes, and you can't, whatever fantasy that you may have, it remains a fantasy. It's not true. You were born a man. You're still a man. No matter what color you paint your nails, and no matter what dresses you put on, you're still a man. So,
just real quick, Julia, Mick, thank you for reposting the stream. If everybody else could repost, we'd appreciate it. Go ahead, Chelsea.
So I agree, obviously, with everything that my dad just said there, but I will diverge from him a little bit, which is that, and I think he'll actually agree with me. He's probably just trying to be more diplomatic than I care to be at this point in my life. I don't believe that due process exists even in our normal courts. Due process only exists in our courts if you have money. That's it. There is no due process otherwise. Because if you don't have money to appeal, you don't have money to hire a lawyer, you don't have money to actually properly fight something, then you will lose. And that just is a fact of the matter. So I know he's trying to be diplomatic and stick to the talking point, but I just wanted to add my 2 cents in about that. But, I think, so as I was explaining to you earlier, Peyman, and my dad knows this, and I think I said it to JP, for Lent, I gave up Twitter. So I'm a little bit not super up on super current events, but I can talk about BC. BC is a great trial case for why the Human Rights Tribunal is, across all provinces, it's such bunk. I mean, you guys have people like Jim McMurtry, who has been absolutely railroaded through all levels of court because he wouldn't say what he was supposed to say about the graves on the residential school grounds. You've got Amy Eileen Ham, your nurse, who was, again, railroaded through all levels of court because of her stance that men aren't women and women aren't men. You have Jessica Yaniv, whatever his real name is, I can't remember now, who went to the Human Rights Tribunal in British Columbia and took, the salons to court that were owned by hardworking Asian immigrant women who don't have excuse my language, a pot to piss in. He took them to court, to the Human Rights Tribunal, and he won because they wouldn't wax his genitals. British Columbia has some of the most high-profile cases of absolute injustice within not just the Human Rights Tribunal, but their court system in general. And it is It's so disgusting. The minute the Jessica Yaniv thing went through, everyone in Canada should have stood up and said, we're done with this. This no longer matters. We're not going to give you any power. We're not going to give you any authority. You don't matter to us anymore. And just know. And it should have been abolished right there and then. Except for that, what happened instead was everyone just shut their eyes and went, la, la, shut their ears and their eyes and went, la, 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 la. And now we see good people, good truth tellers, like Jim McMurtry and Amy Eileen Ham, being dragged through the mud. Because the other thing about the Human Rights Tribunal is that they, even though they're sort of like a kangaroo court, they do set precedent within our actual legal system. So if Jessica Yaniv can get a payout from some lovely, hardworking immigrant women who are just trying to make ends meet, if he can get a payout from that, then that shows you that Amy Eileen Ham now in a regular court system is also guilty. So, we've allowed them to begin to set precedent. And that is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, it's almost like these. I agree with you, Randy. It's like this whole apparatus is used to reinforce this orthodoxy, this progressive orthodoxy, like for all of it too. Like you were mentioning with Jim McMurtry, like we're this colonialistic, genocidal, terrible, irredeemable people. And there's no such thing as gender. It's abstracted. It's like, and they utilize this to weaponize and politicize these tribunals against the people. And what it does, it has a chilling effect. Because like everyone's watching this, they're making examples of these first people. They don't want to put a bunch of revenue into this. They want us all to behave. How does that happen? By normalizing the tyranny. Like if you're in Iran or you're in China, you know damn well, no matter how passionate you feel, well, I can't openly criticize the government. I can't deviate from their orthodoxy. And that's what they're endeavoring to achieve here. You look at in the UK with their online speech act, they had the Online Harms Act in the UK, which has the exact same name. So it goes to show that this legislation isn't coming uniquely from our countries. But what that's been done, it's tens of thousands of British citizens have been put in jail for the crime of social media posts. And that's what they're doing. They want, so I mean, in that climate, your average person that has a family and a job, they just think to themselves, well, I'd love to speak against this, but I can't take the risk. And this is a very scary moment we're in. If anything, we got to double down and be bold right now.
I agree. Like it's not only it's legitimizing a process that is kabuki theater. It is putting kabuki theater and kangaroo courts on a level of legal dominance, and it does have an impact on the real courts as well. But when I say, not that I disagree with Chelsea on this, but there are, even though they're not great, there are actual due processes of law in our real courts, in our ordinary courts. You must be able to question your accuser, which is not the, and you actually have somebody who is knowledgeable about the law who's on the bench. In the human rights tribunals, you are not a legal scholar by any means. You don't have to be a lawyer, and all those other safeguards, like knowing who your accuser is, your cross-examining of evidence, the disclosure of evidence, even though they are all far from perfect, they are completely non-existent in the human rights tribunals. They just, in the human rights tribunals, to give a good example, is because they function on the same way, these administrative tribunals, is the prosecution of Helen Gruss here in Ottawa, where the arbitrator was disallowing relevant, credible, and pertinent information into the trial. And yeah, Chelsea, I forgot all about that other whack job out in BC, whatever his name was, who wanted to get his balls waxed by the Vietnamese salon owners in Vancouver or wherever, and like just bizarre, But again, this is legitimizing this this absurd and dishonest behavior and the lies. So you can see this. It is very much complements the tranny agenda, the SOGI agenda, sexual orientation and gender identity, and the DEI agenda, and all these other agendas are reaffirmed in these human rights tribunals.
I'll throw it over to you in a moment, Chelsea, if you guys want to follow up. But Planet Gone Nuts made a good comment. He goes, the courts have transformed from courts of justice to courts of punishment. I think that's pretty accurate. If you guys want to finish up, Chelsea, if you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, I'm going to diverge a little bit, but I think that it's something that could actually help us through this entire conversation that we're having, which is I'll be totally honest, okay? I have zero faith in any government institution at all at this point in my life. If there's something that the government touches, I have no faith in it at all. And JP brought up Iran and China. And it made me think of the conversation that Tucker Carlson had with Mike Huckabee the other day. And he said, they were talking about the war in Iran, which we'll get to later, but he said, does it matter what the American people think? And Mike Huckabee, now I'm going to paraphrase, but Mike Huckabee, I'm barely paraphrasing actually, Mike Huckabee said, yes, of course it matters what the American people think. He said, you're allowed to vote. That's why we let you have free speech. And it took me so aback when he said allowed. We let you. Okay? And it shocked me when I heard him say it, because you rarely hear people say the truth out loud, especially in politics. And and then Tucker countered, well, like if it matters what we think, then if 70 to 80% of the American public don't want a war in Iran, then don't you think that like you guys should listen to them? And Mike Huckabee said, no, you're allowed to vote, but we will do as we see fit. And I think about this all the time, this idea of democracy, and which is quote unquote upheld by the courts, is a complete illusion. The whole thing is an illusion. And our courts are just part of the illusion to make us feel as though we have any agency or autonomy in our lives. I would actually, don't quote me on this, actually, no, quote me on it. I would rather live in China or Iran right now, because at least their governments are honest. Okay, I am a big proponent of benevolent dictatorship, because what we live in right now is a malevolent dictatorship that tells us it's a democracy. And like I said, our courts, including the Human Rights Tribunal, are a part of upholding that illusion. And I would rather have a benevolent dictator who says, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Okay, like you guys don't get to say it. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, but I'm going to make sure that you guys have what you need. I'm going to make sure that I don't have a tent city down the street from my house. Okay, I'm going to make sure that there's a house for everyone. This is what they did in the USSR. I'm not saying that it's perfect, okay? But there's lots of examples throughout history, and I'm not espousing communism. Do not get me wrong at all, okay? Don't twist my words on that one. But if they're just going to do what they're going to do anyway, then why don't we just call it what it is? And say, okay, if you're just going to do what you're going to do anyway, then at least make sure that all of my peers aren't living in tents behind the grocery store right now in the middle of winter in Sudbury. How about just that as a bare minimum? And I won't say anything bad about you. I won't say anything bad, because the reality is that we're not allowed to say anything bad about them as much as we want. You know, we don't actually have free speech, and we're not allowed to vote. They don't let us. Those are God-given rights in our constitutions. But, well, especially in the American Constitution, not so much ours, but a little bit. But they don't follow it anyway. So get rid of it. Get rid of the courts. I don't even care about them anymore. Like they're just a part of the illusion. It's just a magician on stage. That's all.
I agree. It's like a line I use similarly. It's almost like it's the bread and circuses, like the political system nowadays. It's an elaborate performative charade, and it's to provide us with this illusion of participatory governance. Yes. Why? Because otherwise we would feel empowered to make change. So it's almost like it gives us that pressure release. Oh, well, we're going to support the other guy, and we're going to push back against this agenda. Yeah, and you see it especially in Canada now. I would say it's almost like our system has been captured by a donor class or an oligarchy, by someone above the government, and that's whose agenda is being implemented. Our representatives aren't representing their constituents, the voters, like they're supposed to. They're doing what the party wants. They're doing what these powerful external forces are pressuring them to do, and that's a massive problem.
Mike Huckabee said it, and he just said it out loud.
Yeah, well, I watched that. That was quite the interview. I actually watched it twice. I watched someone analyze it too. It's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean,
I think Huckabee in that interview with Carlson was really exposed some of the fundamental lies of our system, and had difficulty in trying to make the lie fit the puzzle that he wants it, or the illusion that he wants to maintain. And 80% of Americans, according to surveys, don't want a war in Iran. And Huckabee says, well, it's important what they think, but not that important enough that we will act on it. We are going to act on what, the people who actually fund and make the political machine function in the United States and here, the wealthy donors, and we know in the United States, AIPAC is a very significant contributor. Like, this is not, this is not a secret. Trump had Miriam Adelson up on stage with him, extolling the hundreds of millions of dollars that she has contributed, and that she comes to the White House more than anybody else. That's so Huckabee was being disingenuous about it's important what Americans think, but not that important that we'll act upon it. And but I do think it's important not to be too, we have seen other civilizations and other societies that have illusions to their societies, with, and falsehoods. And I'll go to the USSR as one of the more recent examples. It was not a workers' paradise. It was not where the workers of the world united to break their chains. And eventually it collapsed when the lie became so abundantly prevalent to a great many people. And I don't believe that that the Soviet Union collapsed because of Ronald Reagan's Star Wars initiative. It collapsed under the weight of its own dishonesty, and as a great number of people in that society learned just how corrupt and dishonest it was, it fell in on itself. And I think that's what a lot of Canadians, I think we're on that road, that progression here, where Canadians are learning that the illusion is dishonest and is a lie, and that the system will collapse in on itself as we continue to speak honestly about what's going on.
We're kind of drifting towards the topic of Iran. I want to bring a couple of things up. Self-governed says most governments have been oligarchies ruled by a minority, chosen either by birth as in aristocracies or by a religious organization as in theocracies, or by wealth as in democracies. I think that's an interesting comment he made. Before we move to Iran, I might look like I'm holding it all together, but I'm just as angry as Chelsea. And I was talking to my brother yesterday, and the word that he uses a lot, and I started using, is tyranny. What we're living in is tyranny, and it's not just the human rights tribunals. It's the goddamn tax system. It's the goddamn regulations. It's the goddamn humiliation rituals every time I cross the border back into my own country. And they ask me if I have anything to declare, and I say no. They're like, "What's that firewood doing in your truck, boy?" And I'm like, you can't just make rules and then make me out to be the bad guy. Sorry, I had to get that out there. I don't know if you guys want to switch over to Iran. You touched on it, Randy. Chelsea, do you want to start? Or do you want your dad to start?
Yeah, I just want to add to what you just said. It's like, yes, the taxation system, all of that stuff. It's that there's zero in return. That is the humiliation. It's not about the firewood in your truck and having to answer questions when you cross back through to your own country. It's that at the end of the day, you get zero in return.
Can I disagree with you? If they took my money and they burned it in front of me, it would be less insulting than them taking my money and asking me why I have money in my pocket. Where'd you get this money?
I think my point isn't that the humiliation doesn't matter. Okay, it's that I'm saying that there's a bigger umbrella here. Okay, and the umbrella for me is that we can talk about the little, and they seem big, right, when you're going through it. But you can talk about the day-to-day humiliations that you go through. But the bigger umbrella of this story is that you get zero in return for the money that you pay, for the rituals you go through, having to answer for why you've got firewood in your vehicle. It's that for all of those little things that we have to do, you get nothing in return. And that's the humiliation. They're all sitting back, laughing their asses off at every single one of us, saying, these stupid fucks, excuse my language, they're just going to keep doing it. And we're going to keep giving them absolutely nothing. Nothing. What do you get for what you pay in? What do you get for playing the game? You get nothing. And even if you play the game exactly the way that they tell you to, tomorrow you could end up in court and lose absolutely everything. And that's the truth of the system that we live in. And it's not just here in Canada, it's in America as well. It's throughout the entire Western world. You get nothing. And if we want to talk about the USSR, again, not espousing communism ever, or Bolshevism more specifically, there's a great YouTube channel called Ellie in Russia. She's a Russian girl. She used to travel the world, but then when the Ukraine war started, she has to basically just stay within Russia because she can't go anywhere because her visa won't be accepted. No one will give her a visa. So she travels, and she did an episode not that long ago where she went through Moscow and she showed all the different kinds of buildings. They've got 3 main kinds of residential buildings all throughout Russia. They're called Stalinka, Khrushchevka, and Brezhnevka. And it was there's 3 styles of residential buildings, and all of them were, so Stalinkas are a little bit different because it was when they were still quite wealthy. after that, they started building smaller residential buildings because the goal was to not have one single Russian citizen homeless. They're not fancy. Okay. And again, this is not Bolshevism that I'm talking about, because after Stalin, we're talking later on, right? When the Bolsheviks had they were sort of on their way out. They were building these buildings to make sure that no Russian was homeless. Our government can't even be bothered to support builders and developers who actually want to build homes for people to live in. So I'm going more to the tent city thing, but my point is, we can go to Iran, but I just want to like really hammer on my own opinion anyway, that like the whole system is shit. And the whole thing is a humiliation ritual every single day. That's how I feel about this. That's how I feel about the West right now.
You'll get no argument from me on that. Before we go on to Iran, I just want to say about the taxation. So I think it was the Fraser Institute this year released a study indicating that 42 to 43% of your average Canadian family's income is taxed in this country. So it's not just that we don't get anything. That's bad enough. They utilize our tax revenue against us. They use it to fund their state-sponsored media. The weaponized mass migration that's come into Canada with the absence of infrastructure reinforcement. You can't bring a bunch of people, like I'm in Nova Scotia. So they bring a bunch of people into Nova Scotia. We're not as developed comparatively to other parts of the world. There were no homes built. There were no doctors hired. So now this is anecdotal. The building I'm living in, and Peyman's heard me say this many times, but in 2020, it was $900 for 2 bedrooms, very working class area of Halifax. Right now, presently in 2026, 6 years later, $2,400 for that same unit. This is unbelievable. And this is cause and effect. It's not incompetence. They didn't know, oh, well, we're going to bring in like a couple 100,000 people and drop them in Nova Scotia without doing anything else in regards to the infrastructure. And they know this is going to happen. So it's like I say, it's bad enough. Like we're not getting anything for our tax. Well, we're getting fucked over further. Pardon the vulgarity.
You're right. It's not just nothing. It's getting everything taken.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. So let me make it just a slight. There are some people in our country, in every country, who are benefiting substantially, like really a great deal. This system is working for Lord David Thompson of Fleet, who is Canada's richest man and has like $80 billion. The system works for Galen Weston, the owner of Loblaws and Shoppers Drug Mart and Weston Bread. He's about $20 billion. And Casey Irving and Paul Demery. Like the system is a predatory system. So the top predators, they're the ones at the top of the food chain, and everybody else is the prey. And the balancing act for government and the predator class, in my view, is how much can we extract from everybody else? We're going to extract as much as we can but before they get rebellious. Like that is the key for government. Take as much, give as little, and benefit the fewest to the point. We don't want to get quite to the storming of the Bastille and the guillotine. We don't want to get them really pissed off. We just want to get them close to that. I think we're getting closer and closer to that point. And I think, and that is, when we look at this coming war in Iran, that is again just another part of the predator class extracting wealth in this case, mostly from the U.S. citizens, you know,
It's not just
buying planes from Grumman, Northrop, and Boeing, and buying missiles from Raytheon. Like you can't have a military industrial complex that doesn't go to war. You can't have a socialized pharmaceutical system that doesn't have pandemics. Yeah, you can't have these built-in predators unless you also have something for them to do. So whether it's COVID or a war in Iran, or a war in Venezuela, or blockading Cuba, or in Ukraine, there has to be a pretense for the extraction model. And we're pretty good at making up pretenses. And I think the Iran war, to me, there's one of the best illustrations, as I said earlier, since 1996, Bibi Netanyahu has been warning us that Iran is within weeks of developing a nuclear bomb and a nuclear arsenal. And he's done it every year since 1996. And even, it was just less than a year ago that Donald Trump said that he had obliterated Iran's nuclear industry and that it was finished, it was kaput, and game over, job well done. And well, Jesus, those Iranians, Peyman, are really, really, I don't know what to say. For 30 years, they've been able to completely pull this hoax on Israel and the Americans, and they can rebuild an entire nuclear industry in 6 months. So, like, come on, guys, like, you'd have to be, such a naive and, beyond naive to not know the story of the boy who cries wolf. And Bibi Netanyahu is the boy who's been crying wolf for 30 years about Iran. And looks like the Americans are going to fall for it again.
Bibi's actually the lying parent.
Yeah, the lying
Who's
parent.
getting their kid to do the most effed up thing that you could ever imagine them doing, that is going to ensure their own destruction. That's what Bibi Netanyahu is. He's the lying parent.
Good analogy. Yeah.
If we want to go full circle here.
I actually watched a compilation video of Bibi, and it was going back to as far as 92. And it was all of the times, and it was edited really tightly that he said the exact same thing, sitting in America. And it's just, it's hard to believe that we're here now, like you said, after 30 years.
One day he'll get it right.
I wanted to say it's not just wealth redistribution or wealth extraction that is gained by the elites through these kinds of things, like threatening war with Iran, or going to war in Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria, or Libya. It's not, or bombing Venezuela, or whatever. It's not just wealth redistribution and extraction. That would be the best case scenario if it was only that. What it is literally slaughtering our men and women, our good, kind-hearted men and women who believe in the countries that they love and grew up in, slaughtering them and completely demoralizing the entire rest of the population. And so, I'm never trying to overwrite what anyone says. I'm always looking at what is the umbrella here? Okay, so yes, are they extracting resources and wealth, and are they laundering money and redistributing money through the system to themselves? Yes, of course they are. But they are slaughtering not just our boys and girls. They're slaughtering boys and girls around the world, and they're simultaneously demoralizing an entire civilization through these wars. And that is how they're able to continue to get away with it. If you can demoralize us enough and you can kill enough of our children, then what do I care if Galen Weston gets another $10 million tomorrow? Like, my kid's gone. My brother's gone. My cousin's gone. My friend's son is gone. What do I care anymore? Because they've already taken from me the most precious and valuable thing that they possibly could. So here, take whatever I have. Now, it doesn't matter anymore. And that's the goal. And that's like, I know it sounds so, like, I'm not actually black belt, guys. Okay. And to the listeners and to the people I'm talking to, I'm not actually black belt. I try to be, I'm a very actually optimistic person. I just try to be real about what's actually happening here. And this constant threat of war with Iran, you know what they haven't done to the Iranian people yet? Against all odds, they have not demoralized the Iranian people. I watch so many videos about people going to Iran and just hanging out and talking to people there. They have every reason to be demoralized, and they're not compared to us.
I don't know.
And they want to crush them because of it.
No, you bring up a good point. I don't know why that is that they're not demoralized, but we are. I wanted to, I don't know if your dad is here, but I was thinking COVID, Canadian people were just brain dead and they bought into it.
Mhm.
And then the residential school hoax, brain dead, they bought into it. And then the Ukraine war, they just got in line, they bought into it. And then
Mhm.
Orange Man bad, April
Yeah.
election, they bought into it.
Yeah.
At this point, like, they're not like critical thinking people. They're not individuals. They're just drones.
Well, it's easy when like I think because of what we were talking about earlier, it's much easier to have someone tell you what to do rather than have to go out and figure it out on your own. So
You're describing a child.
Well, and that's what we are. We're children. And that's like, what does Eisenhower says public policy could itself become captive of the scientific technological elite. And it's not just the scientific and it's not just the technological. We are under the rule and the thumb of the elite, whether it's scientific or technological or federal government or whatever it is. And that's captured our public policy. And in turn, we've been told not to worry about it. It's a nanny state, right? Don't worry about it. We'll take care of you while we literally rape you for everything you have.
We got about 15 minutes left. If you guys don't mind.
Oh God, we better go on.
Sorry?
We better move on.
No, there's just one major topic left, and it's tied to what you just said, Chelsea. Randy, you brought up the concept of Canadians that used to live in debt-free homes, and now they're renting for a living. I think that's sort of tied to what's going on.
Yeah, I think, and it's all gets blended together. And maybe I'll start this off like with what Chelsea was saying. It is very, very different. Like, it's easy for me to see what has happened to my country over my approaching 70 years of life. Okay. It's not so easy for somebody who's 25 or 30 or 40 or who's younger. And even people of my age, we were told that, I guess with this, you've seen patterns. I've seen patterns, and I have the knowledge of what things used to be like. Not everybody has that, but if you don't have prior knowledge, it's very, very difficult to see the pattern that is there if you can't see the dots. And I think that really is, we were told that we could do away with our history. We could do away with our heritage. We could do away with our culture. and still maintain all the benefits of a great Canadian society. But in doing so, we have untethered ourselves from any pattern recognition. And like when I grew up in this country, every man was expected to leave their home when they were finished high school and go out and soon after be able to buy a home and end up living in your own home debt free, right? And that goes back to our heritage of a man's home is their castle. And it's not just metaphorical. It is your castle gives you independence. It is self-reliance. The state cannot intrude into your life. You are living in your castle. And we've just utterly destroyed that understanding. And, like I'm there, like I can do and say what I want, and I can live largely independent of the state because I have my own home, right?
And you're a boomer.
And I'm a boomer. But but many people, and I did that mostly on a single income earning, right? Except for a few years, my wife didn't work. And here we are today with two income families not even being able to afford rent, and never having that dignity of independence and self-reliance and a debt-free home. Never will they have their castle, right? And listen, I've lived in apartments. Like that's not a castle. You've got everybody else above you, beside you, surrounding you. That's not yours. And I think we've lost sight of just how important that is in Canadian culture. And again, I'll just put this out, not to be boastful, anything, fellas, but because it wasn't. I may have been ahead of the curve a little bit, but I bought my first property when I was 19, and I had saved up $3,000. And by the time I was 19, like and working at blue collar work, and that's like I said, I might have been ahead of the curve a little bit, but my older brother Larry, he bought his home when he was 21, and we all bought our homes. Like that was ingrained into us that if you want to be independent, and you better want to be independent, and you better be wanting to be self-reliant, then you better own your own home. Government can't touch it nearly as much when you're independent. So, and I think that, all comes with this untethering us from our heritage. And the first pulling of the strings of and ripping that fabric of our heritage apart was getting rid of the red ensign with the cross of St. George and the cross of St. Andrew, and coming up with this nondescript piece of nonsense stylized maple leaf between two red bars, that just completely broke with our heritage, and we didn't see it at the time. But I think that really, and it's just been a steady progression ever since, and we have lost sight of the pattern that happened in Canada, and we often thought we were doing the right thing, trading away our homes, trading away our heritage, trading away our faith. And as I put in, I think we really have We traded away the moral oversight of our faith in our country, and we traded it for the supremacy of the state and the supremacy now of the algorithm. That's who our oversight is now, is the algorithm rather than Jesus Christ in our country. And you can tell which one that I prefer.
Chelsea.
Elon Musk and his algorithm is not divine in my books.
I was just going to say, imagine what it was like growing up with him as your father. Holy. Anyway, but funnily enough, before I knew what we were going to be talking about tonight, because I had called my dad yesterday or the day before to ask what we were talking about, and he said he didn't know. So I came into this very prepared. But last night, my husband was feeling quite demoralized just about work and, sort of the state of life in the world right now. And so, as a good Hillier does, I put on probably the most depressing thing I find, which is Dwight D. Eisenhower's farewell address from 1960, and I forced him to watch the whole thing through. And there was some really good, I've listened to it a million times. My dad used to make us watch it, and he used to read it to us, and but we rewatched it again, and there's this thing that Eisenhower says. It's towards the end. He says, actually, it's about 11 minutes and 32 seconds. He says, another factor in maintaining balance involves the element of time. As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss also of their political and spiritual heritage. We want democracy to survive for all generations to come, not to become the insolvent phantom of tomorrow. And I see the comment about the military-industrial complex. That's the speech. But this idea, he warned everyone in 1960 about what was to come. And no one listened. He literally, in that one address, he prophesized exactly the world we live in today. Because instead of heeding his warning, we did exactly, I shouldn't say we, because I wasn't here. We did exactly what he told us not to do. And, so when Dad's talking about buying his first home at 19, well, I think it was pretty obvious by the time I was 10, 15, that buying a home at 19 was not going to be possible. At that point, I think that was pretty clear. And it's just, it's such a tragedy that, and I'm not blaming Dad. Obviously, he was the best dad I could ever have asked for. And I'm not blaming all boomers. I'm just saying that there was someone who sat and told us what was going to happen. And now we are living out the worst of it. I think we're living through worse than even Eisenhower could have ever seen. Like I said, behind my grocery store that I go to here in Sudbury, I live in Northern Ontario. It is effing freezing here. And even when it's minus 40 this winter, it's still snowing. It snows every single day and has for 3 months. And behind my grocery store in an old industrial lot beside the railway, there's 50 tents with more than one person per tent living there. And that's just one tent encampment in the city. One. There's a mountain in my backyard. I live in a nice neighborhood. We rent a nice home. There's a mountain, and behind the mountain is green space that will never be developed because of all the rock. And down there's homeless people living down there in tents in minus 40 degree weather. And they're the same age as me. And my husband took my child actually and another guy down to the tent city one day to talk to people. And these are not people who started out as drug addicts. They're not people who started out with nothing. They're people who especially during COVID, ended up getting divorced, losing their homes, and ended up on the street. And now, 4 years later, are living in tents, addicted to fentanyl now because it's the only thing that will keep them warm. These are people the same age as me. I'm 40. That's the story here. How could we have allowed that to happen? How could anyone have allowed that to happen in this country? We should be the wealthiest country on the face of the planet. And instead, we are destitute, and people that I went to high school with are living in tents behind my grocery store. Travesty.
And we never had it. Like this, people need to realize, like, there was no tent cities when I was a young boy growing up.
There were tent cities when I was a kid.
Well, that's right. It's just, and here we are in, one of the wealthiest, as far as resources are concerned, we have some of the wealthiest and more richest resources in the world. And how is it possible that, Jesus, when we look at it, how is it possible that my ancestors came here a couple hundred of years ago, and within a season they weren't living in tents? They had built little homes like the one in the picture behind me. That was built by the people that first came here in 1816, and they built that in the first summer. And that was long before power tools and long before government inspectors. Nobody came and inspected that one. Think of it, boys and girls. Why is it that Canadians can't now have what our ancestors had 200 years ago?
I think, honestly, we were betrayed in the most profound of ways. I believe our political class has sold us out. I'm familiar with that Eisenhower speech. It's a great one. And he references the military-industrial complex, saying the threats in the future won't come from abroad, they'll come from within. The very next president after him was Kennedy, who said he was going to scatter the deep state, the CIA, to the winds. And we saw it back into the left. Now, that was 63. Now, uniquely, there's a correlation there, too. I'm not going to get into it. I can't. It's speculative. But it was 1964 when Canada then decided to change its flag. And Diefenbaker famously warned us against that too. He said exactly what you were saying, Randy. Like, this is our culture. This shows our sacrifice, the various people that make up our nation. And it's letting go of our identity for this corporate logo, essentially. And we were warned, but I mean, we were betrayed too. So as much as like we're looking for someone to blame or scapegoat here, I think it's time to, like, a lot of people drop the ball. It's like, how can we pragmatically resolve this moving forward? And that's a hard question.
Well, I think the only way you do that is by being honest with people. And I think by encouraging people to be honest and to speak out. I think that's the most effective way. The other way is armed rebellion. But I think speaking truthfully and honestly is probably the path we should try first before we get to the Bastille and the guillotine.
Well, how you get to that place, though, and this is the scary part, is that the only time that the majority will start actually speaking out is when they've got nothing to lose. And that's scary because, like, this is like full circle back to where we started. Like, if you have a family and a home and a job in this country right now, you better count yourself lucky, because many don't. And losing a job could very easily mean losing your home and your family tomorrow. And it's just the fact of human nature that the vast majority will not speak out until they have nothing to lose. And that's going to be a really bad spot when we get to the place where we've got nothing to lose. Because that's also when you get armed rebellion as well. It's when even when you've got nothing to lose and you're speaking out and nothing changes, then rebellion happens. And it would be nice to change course before we get to the place where the vast majority of people don't have anything to lose.
Well, I do think it is, part of this is people that do have things that can be lost need to wake up and realize, do you want to fight for it now while you have it? Or do you want to wait until it's gone before you get and
I know, but that's a pipe dream of human nature, Dad. Sorry. Just is.
Well, we'll see. I think the first thing is to encourage people to see the patterns, but more importantly, to speak truthfully about what's going on. And again, that is one of the reasons why we had this view that that families should have their own homes, so that you can have the security to speak truthfully and be independent of government. Like, what good is it to have a castle if you're too afraid too afraid to lose it? Like, defend it. Like, what sort of king are you if you're fearful to get out of your castle?
The kings had other methods other than just words.
Hey?
I said kings had other methods. Anyway, John Paul, JP is being waiting here. Dad and I have a penchant to take over things. I apologize.
No worries whatsoever. You guys are the guests, and we like to accommodate our guests. But it was a great conversation where it's winded down. I just want to thank you guys for coming on. It's always an immense pleasure to get to speak with you, Randy. And it's very much nice to meet you, Chelsea. I heard a lot about you. So you're very similar to your dad. I could tell you're your father's daughter for sure.
I have been accused of that before.
Well, I guess following up with what JP said, thank you very much for coming on. And I just wanted to end on one thing I started, if you guys can bear with me. Here we go. DGT 3800, arguably the worst name. There needs to be millions of viewers, not 25. I think he or she was watching off of Randy's YouTube account. There's only 25 viewers at the time. Like, these are the conversations that if we weren't being suppressed, the algorithm analogy that Randy made, we'd be much more successful in getting our message out. But I guess, onwards and upwards, and the struggle continues.
But let's responding there. Like, that's one YouTube channel. You've got a YouTube channel. It's also being broadcast on Facebook. It's also being broadcast on Twitter. And share it around. Get more people thinking and talking about this, rather than being concerned that there's only 25 people on that one platform.
No, good point.
Yeah, but it is fair. And again, this goes back to we're demoralized, right, as a society, and so you tend to focus on that. But all you can do is keep on going, right? Like, you put one foot in front of the other and you keep going, and you're not going to get more viewers if you stop doing this every week, or however often you do it. You're only going to get more viewers if you keep going.
Yep.
And that's the truth for everyone in every facet of their lives. So.
Yep. Well put.
There is hope. There is hope.
I guess Chelsea, we'll give the final words to you. Quick, something witty.
Oh Lord. Well, I don't think I'm supposed to say this, but it's my dad's birthday today.
Oh, we forgot. I was supposed to do like balloons in the background, but I had a very shitty day. I'm so sorry, Randy. Happy birthday.
It is actually his birthday today. So I will say happy birthday to my father. I told him he doesn't look a day over 45 because when he was 45, I was about 20. And I don't think I look a day over 20. So
There you go.
so good on both of us. But no, it was a pleasure, and I'll leave it at this. Like I know I said it earlier, I'm really not black pilled. I know that some people can listen to me and think that I am. I'm really not. I like to study people, and I think that it's a really important thing for all of us to do is study people and study systems and study, the institutions that we live within and among, and sort of look at what the problems are and imagine ways that it could be different. Because when we stop imagining the ways that things could be different, then we're really toast, And so dream, this isn't witty, but dream, keep dreaming, and try to make your dreams reality. Because when we stop dreaming, like I said, we're screwed. When you stop imagining, you're screwed. And I don't think all is hopeless.
Sorry to interrupt your monologue there, but it is your dad's birthday.
Eldon, I know, they're pouring in. I can see them.
Happy birthday, Randy. Sharon Michaud, happy birthday, Randy. JT, I don't know what's going on. Happy birth, Dad. I think it's a mistake. Planet Gone Nuts, happy birthday, Randy. Godya says happy birthday, Randy. Lauren Greg, happy birthday, Randy. There's a whole bunch of them. JT corrected himself.
All 25.
Yeah.
All 25 people said happy birthday. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, there we go. So,
I'm too poor to give my dad a birthday present, so this is what I'm giving him. There's your witty comment for the day. I'm 40 years old and broke, so there's your comment. There's your wittiness. You know what? He deserves all the love in the world. He's been an amazing advocate for my brothers and I and all of our kids, and also for everyone who lives in this country. So
that's a good point from Crypto Spartacus. If it was hopeless, they wouldn't need to censor us. So there we go.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess we can end it on that positive note. Randy, Chelsea will hold you over until after the episode, but thank you very much for jumping on.
It's been
thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much, guys.